Turn now to Venezuela and the ongoing protests following the disputed presidential election. Thousands have taken to the streets in recent days, clashing with riot police in the capital of Caracas. Police have surrounded the Argentine embassy, where 6 opposition figures are sheltering.
Protests have erupted in the Venezuelan capital the day after President Nicolas Maduro claimed victory in the latest election. The opposition has contested Maduro's declaration, accusing him of orchestrating a voting scam. Incoming footage showed tires burning on highways and large crowds on the streets, with police on motorbikes firing tear gas. But how did a country with the world's largest proven oil reserves descend into such turmoil? The story begins in the 1920s, when massive oil reserves were discovered in Venezuela. The country quickly became the world's second largest petroleum producer. This oil boom transformed Venezuela into one of the wealthiest countries globally and the most prosperous in Latin America. The South American nation was once 12 times as rich as China and 4 times as rich as Japan. The Venezuelan bolivar was strong, nearly on par with the US dollar, and the healthcare system flourished. At its peak, Venezuela's per capita GDP was among the highest in the world, and its economy was thriving. In 1943, the ruling dictator, General Juan Vicente Gomez, decided to generate even better profits for the country by enacting a law that required foreign-owned oil companies to give half their profits to Venezuela. This influx of money primarily bolstered the military, but the country was not equipped to handle such sudden wealth. Before the oil boom, Venezuela's agriculture sector and economy were underdeveloped. Land ownership was concentrated among a few wealthy families who grew even richer from oil profits. Despite these challenges, oil revenue allowed the economy to grow, and many Venezuelans moved from rural poverty to cities like Caracas. As a petrostate, Venezuela's politics and government became deeply intertwined with the oil economy. In the late 1950s, the country seemed to make progress by ousting dictator Marcos Pérez Jiménez in 1958 and electing Rómulo Betancourt as president, initiating a democratic movement. The per capita GDP steadily rose over the next 2 decades, and the government seized more control of the oil industry. However, Venezuela's heavy reliance on oil led to what economists call Dutch disease, where the focus on oil production stifled other industries like agriculture and production. When oil prices plummeted in the 1980s, the economy suffered significantly. President Carlos Andrés Pérez had to accept a $4.6 billion bailout from the IMF, which required severe austerity measures. Prices for everyday goods soared, leading to violent protests. Pérez responded with curfews and the removal of civil rights, demonstrating the government's willingness to suppress dissent to maintain control over the oil-dependent economy. Amid the unrest, a charismatic military officer named Hugo Chavez attempted a coup in 1992. Though the coup failed, it made Chavez a household name. He leveraged this fame to win the 1998 presidential election, promising to redistribute wealth and eliminate corruption, capturing the hearts of Venezuela's poor. Once Hugo Chavez assumed power, he systematically dismantled democratic institutions and consolidated his authority. He seized control of Petróleos de Venezuela, S.A., PDVSA, the national oil company, and nationalized a wide range of industries, including steel, aluminum, hotels, and chemical plants. Chavez also launched ambitious social programs funded by oil revenues, which initially succeeded in reducing poverty and improving health and education. Chavez introduced strict price controls on basic goods to make them more affordable for the poor. However, these controls often set prices below production costs, discouraging local production and leading to widespread shortages. In a bid to promote small-scale farming and food sovereignty, large agricultural estates were expropriated and redistributed. Unfortunately, these farms were frequently handed over to inexperienced farmers or cooperatives without adequate support, resulting in decreased agricultural productivity. The decline in domestic food production significantly contributed to widespread shortages of basic goods, forcing the country to rely heavily on imports. As oil revenues declined, financing these imports became increasingly difficult. While Chavez's extensive social programs initially reduced poverty and improved health and education, they were ultimately unsustainable. The private sector contracted sharply, reducing economic diversification and increasing the country's dependency on oil, which further exacerbated economic instability. In 2002, a strike by PDVSA workers nearly halted oil production to pressure Chavez to call early elections, forcing the government to fire 18,000 employees, approximately 40% of the workforce, and hire less skilled but loyal workers. Chavez's attempt to renegotiate drilling contracts with foreign companies in 2007 backfired when companies like ConocoPhillips and ExxonMobil refused, resulting in asset seizures. The regime assumed it could handle the oil industry internally, but failed to reinvest profits or maintain experienced personnel, causing a steady decline in production. By the end of Chavez's tenure, the country's foreign debt had doubled. Following Chavez's death in 2013, Nicolas Maduro took power and continued his predecessor's policies. The economy was already in shambles, exacerbated by falling oil prices. Maduro's government restricted internet access, jailed opponents, and suppressed democratic processes. The 2018 election was widely regarded as illegitimate by the international community. Maduro's continued reliance on oil revenues, which kept falling, led to a significant economic contraction. Between 2014 and 2021, Venezuela's GDP shrank by nearly three-quarters, and inflation soared to extreme levels. Maduro's government has faced international sanctions, further crippling the economy. The once thriving nation now grapples with one of the highest inflation rates in the world, reaching 234% in 2022. The COVID-19 pandemic compounded these issues, pushing more Venezuelans into poverty and forcing many to flee the country in search of better opportunities. Venezuela faces severe economic challenges, with half of its 28 million residents living in poverty. Despite sitting atop the world's largest oil reserves, the country struggles with hyperinflation, shortages of basic goods, and political instability. Venezuela's dramatic rise and fall illustrate the perils of over-reliance on a single industry and economic mismanagement. Once a beacon of prosperity in Latin America, Venezuela now serves as a cautionary tale of how wealth can turn to ruin when corruption, poor governance, and a lack of economic diversification take hold. The 2024 election results, which declared Maduro the winner, have led to further unrest, with citizens and foreign governments questioning the legitimacy of the process. As the nation struggles to rebuild, it faces the daunting task of restoring trust in its government and economy. The world watches, hoping for a turnaround that seems ever more elusive in the face of ongoing challenges.